Hester Pierce goes after Gary Gensler. Oh my God, these clips are insane. They just had a congressional hearing, and Hester Pierce has so many good answers here. She actually rebukes Gary Gensler in so many situations. This is a longer video, guys, but this is what's happening at Congress versus the SEC chair right now. You have to see this entire thing. I know it's going to be a little bit longer video, but if you watch this entire thing, you will understand a lot more what's happening in the U.S. So stay tuned, watch this. If you like it, share it. If you're not subscribed, please. We're trying to get to 40,000 people by the end of the year. We can do it with your help. Let's get into this video.
The SEC broke the law. Your attorneys lied to the court, and no one in your leadership here in D.C. has been held accountable. That tracks. Seems like business as usual here in Washington.
Woo!
Okay, switching gears very quickly.
Let's do it.
It's been recently reported that Vice President Harris has finally said she'd craft clear rules of the road for the digital asset space if she becomes president. Is this your approach too, sir? Or do you think she's rebuking you because she doesn't think you've done a good enough job establishing these clear rules
Tom
over
Emmer.
the last 3 years
of
her administration?
I think that there's laws in place. If Congress wishes to change them, they'll change them. But we are enforcing the laws, and there are many people in this field
so you don't
that are
think
not
she's
following
rebuking
the laws.
Reclaiming.
Anytime he says reclaiming my time, it means the other guy needs to shut the hell up and let him continue. They only get 5 minutes to talk each time. That's why he's saying I'm reclaiming my time.
Well, it's very interesting that you view your performance that way, because we have a litany of court cases, extraordinary confusion in the marketplace, and millions of Americans pining for clarity from you. You've abused the agency's enforcement tools, and you've even baited companies eager to comply with you, only to hit them with enforcement actions. You've retaliated against businesses and people who have come before this committee to talk about the next generation of American finance. And perhaps, somehow, worst of all, you've made up the term crypto asset security. This term is nowhere to be found in statute. You made it up. You never provided any interpretive guidance on how crypto asset security might be defined within the walls of your SEC. Yet, you made the broad proclamation that you believe a majority of tokens are crypto asset securities. You did this, and you deliberately used this made-up term as the basis for your entire enforcement crusade over the past 3 years, only for your lawyers to retract it in a footnote to a court just last week. Your inconsistencies on this issue, sir, have set this country back. We could not have had a more historically destructive or lawless chairman of the SEC.
Yes!
I yield back.
I love you, Tom Emmer. Keep bringing the fire. Also, here you go. Commissioner Pierce is under the fire. I wish she was the head of the SEC, because I think we'd be a lot further in crypto in the U.S. I think she would have helped instead of hurt companies. She is one of the commissioners. Says SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce says the SEC should have admitted long ago that crypto tokens themselves are not securities. Holy shit.
I think what's happening is that we're trying to be ambiguous because the legal precision carries with it real implications. And this is why people have been coming to us and saying we need clarity. Is the token itself a security, or is it part of an investment contract? Is it being sold together with an investment contract? If it is, what is that investment contract, and how long does it track along with the token? By using imprecise language, we've been able to sort of suggest that the token itself is a security apart from that investment contract, which has implications for secondary sales. It has implications for who can list it. And I think this is absolutely, we've fallen down on our duty as a regulator not to be precise. And so tucking into a footnote that, yes, we admit that now actually the token itself is not a security, that's something that we should have admitted long ago and then started wrestling with the difficult questions.
Right. So
I think what's happening is that we're trying to be...
All right, so she needs to be the head of the SEC. All right, I got a bunch of different clips here. We're going to play them all. I'm not going to read all this here. Let's just get into these clips.
But there are different terms, and words have meaning.
Words have meaning.
And the fact that you've used multiple different words to explain what seems to be the same phenomenon, I think really raises questions about clarity.
Well, the laws are clear, and it's written by the Supreme Court, but also...
The laws are clear, but what we're seeing from the SEC is a lack of clarity. That's what I'm trying to ask you about. You have the direct question is about the different terms, and rather than answering that question, you answered a separate question. Kudos to you. Commissioner Peirce, let's get into this question. Do you think that one reason why multiple terms are being used here for crypto is that there's no regulatory clarity or consensus identifying which tokens may or may not be offered pursuant to an investment contract.
I think that's absolutely true. We've taken a legally imprecise view to mask the regulatory lack of clarity.
So this question of an investment contract, the SEC defined crypto asset securities as an investment contract represented by the underlying crypto asset. Yet, tucked away in a footnote on an amended complaint, the SEC clarified a security is determined by the, quote, contracts, expectations, and understandings centered on the sales and distribution of a digital asset, and not that the digital asset itself is a security. Is the SEC using inconsistent standards here? I mean, is that what's happening?
I think what's happening is that we're trying to be ambiguous because the legal precision carries with it real implications. And this is why people have been coming to us and saying we need clarity. Is the token itself a security? Or is it part of an investment contract? Is it being sold together with an investment contract? If it is, what is that investment contract and how long does it track along with the token? By using imprecise language, we've been able to sort of suggest that the token itself is a security apart from that investment contract, which has implications for secondary sales. It has implications for who can list it. And I think this is absolutely, we've fallen down on our duty as a regulator not to be precise. And so tucking into a footnote that, yes, we admit that now actually the token itself is not a security, that's something that we should have admitted long ago and then started wrestling with.
Make her the head of the SEC. That's what you need to do.
Would a statutory definition provide that clarity for the agency? Or is this something the agency can do itself?
You know, we have authority where we can provide guidance. We can use our exemptive authority. It's always helpful to have Congress weigh in, but there certainly are some guidelines we could provide in this area that we have chosen not to provide.
But a statutory definition would help.
Well, I always welcome the input of Congress.
All right, she always welcomes the input of Congress. Let's keep going.
It's great to have all five of you here today. Today's hearing directs attention to the Commission's dysfunctions and, frankly, to the Chairman's politicization of the Commission and its work. Let me highlight 7 failures. Abuse of the rulemaking procedures, 61 so far, inappropriately short public comment periods, unworkable and unlawful ESG disclosure mandates.
He's ripping into
Hotel California-style rules for crypto where, they all have the ability or direction to come check in anytime you like, but never with authority to leave.
Love it.
Some approval
The
or
Eagles.
clarity. Endless discovery with no resolution, no clarity, regulation by enforcement for crypto.
Yep.
An unworkable proposal to overhauling our equity market structure, de facto ban on crypto through proposed custody rule, and failure to work with Congress, frankly undermining the work that Congress done to provide clarity here. So as many of my colleagues have done today at this hearing, the courts have, even the DOJ, have highlighted severe mismanagement. The list goes on, but unfortunately, I do have limited time. Commissioner Peirce, would you say that the SEC's rulemaking and enforcement agenda reflects the priorities of the commissioners as a whole, or has the Commission become an extension of Chairman Gensler's agenda?
Oh, this is good.
Agenda is the chairman's agenda.
Do you guys have collaboration?
So basically you have 5 commissioners, right? And they're all supposed to look at the information and make a decision. But right now it's basically Gary Gensler pushing the other people that are on this chair, right? What he wants to do. So it's his agenda. Him and Elizabeth Warren and whoever else is running them, right? That's why we need John Deaton in office in Massachusetts. Vote John Deaton. Please, please. Please.
I mean, I saw one of the commissioners today look like it might be the first time he was asked his opinion on something. Just expected to ratify whatever Chairman Gensler throws out there.
I mean, I think the issue is that Chair Gensler has a lot of ideas that he's trying to move forward on, and there are other things that I think we should be spending our time on that we're not spending our time on. And so I think that's the nature of some of our disagreements.
Problems being left unsolved. I appreciate you for highlighting many of them. My concern is just that by taking the world's best capital markets, I mean, we don't even have 5% of the world's GDP, but we have over 50% of the world's invested capital.
There you go.
Taking something that works pretty well, that needs clarity and oversight to continue. Instead, we're working with a declared war by Secretary Warren and other Gary Gensler allies to undermine our capital markets and some of the most innovative companies out there. For that reason, I proposed the SEC Stabilization Act as a structural reform to deal with our Gary Gensler problem, but also with the structural challenges at the SEC that highlight it can be exploited by bad actors. One of the areas that I want to highlight is special purpose broker-dealers. Commissioner Peirce, do you believe that a special purpose broker-dealer process could provide a first step towards broker-dealers handling tokenized securities?
I mean, at the time that it came out, I said it could be a baby step, but that was 4 years ago, and this baby's not walking yet. So I'm not as optimistic as I was back then.
Yeah, I'm concerned as well, and it kind of creates a separate path where some of Chairman Gensler's friends and allies could get special permission and the rest of the market be excluded. For each commissioner, maybe we'll start down there with you, Mr. Ueda. Have you or any member of your staff been instructed by the SEC staff to direct or otherwise ask FINRA to avoid approving broker-dealer applications with crypto assets?
No, I have not.
Commissioner Peirce?
No, but TM our Trading and Markets division is the one that interacts with FINRA. So the issue is that there's clear messaging from the SEC that we're not trying to move the crypto industry forward, and that's reflected in this as well.
She is so honest. I love it. Give me more.
No, and I think I might disagree a little bit with the clear messaging point from Commissioner Peirce.
Of course you would.
Clear direction.
Of course you would.
There's lots of rhetoric, and we can get down to brass tacks and look at ways to move forward.
Well, Mr. Gensler, no surprise, many of us aren't fans of your approach to the job, but it does seem that you've abused your authority, and you seem to kind of gloat as candidate Harris decides that she wants to pivot on crypto and say, no, you can trust us. We're going to be okay on this. It seems like you're gloating. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. The war on crypto goes on. So as you highlighted, you meet with the chairman of the Federal Reserve regularly. Do you guys discuss things like Operation Choke Point 2.0, a way to block and restrict market certainty for crypto?
Okay, so Gary Gensler meets with banks, right? He meets with the Fed. And they basically tell him what they want him to be working on, right? Banks want to slow crypto down in the U.S. Why? Because it replaces a lot of what they do, right? You're talking about trillions of dollars a year going through these systems, right? And you have these intermediary third parties, right, that take their 5 or 6% every time of all of this money, right? And if you don't need those because you have smart contracts, right, you don't need that third person, that third party to verify if everything is this and this, then how much money would be saved, right? And me and you would stop getting screwed by Gary Gensler and the banks.
Affiliated firms?
I've never heard that term, and I'd also want to say half of the rules that we've adopted, 42 rules, half of them have actually been bipartisan.
Some of the work's been good, but a lot of it's been bad. Last question, Commissioner Ueda. It's great to have all 5 of you here today.
All right, a little bit more here.
Thank you for the clarity. Commissioner Peirce, thank you for the clarity. Commissioner Peirce, this situation highlights one of my concerns about how the SEC is approaching digital asset regulation. Among members of this committee, we are debating whether the current rules are sufficient, while at the same time, the SEC is trying to modify existing rules, albeit not effectively, in my opinion, to seemingly provide some clarity to market participants. Can you describe your concerns with how the SEC has comprehensively approached digital asset regulation?
I mean, I think the first problem is that we've used enforcement as our leading foot instead of using regulation. And that could mean putting out guidance to say, here's what's clearly outside of the securities laws, and here's what fits within it. It could be initiating a rulemaking process. It could be working with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to figure out where jurisdictional lines lie. So there's a lot that we can do, but enforcement is not the way that we should. I mean, of course, when there's fraud, that's one thing, but we're talking registration violations of entities that have tried to come in and register.
Thank you. I agree and appreciate that perspective. I want to quickly switch gears. I would like to discuss your position.
All right, not helpful, kind of ends. Let's see, there's one more clip here.
Can you identify any specific statutory authority, Commissioner Peirce, can you identify any specific statutory authority where Congress has granted the SEC authority to promulgate regulations that compel companies to disclose general and immaterial information about environmental or social issues?
As I pointed out in connection with the climate rule, I'm very concerned about moving beyond materiality. I think that we are on shaky legal ground when we move away from financial materiality, which is the touchstone of our disclosure.
Well, is there any statutory authority at all, specific statutory authority?
There are instances where Congress has told us specifically conflict minerals, for example, where we want you to go and do something regardless of the materiality.
Well, let me ask you this. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Mr. Kasten and Mr. Vargas, introduced the Climate Risk Disclosure Act in the 116th Congress, and then the House passed a version of that in the 117th Congress, Representative Vargas's Corporate Governance Improvement Investor Protection Act. Those pieces of legislation, to their credit, to my colleagues' credit, attempted to confer specific statutory authority to the Commission to do what you did in the climate disclosure rule. But guess what? The Senate didn't pass those laws. The fact that this body has proposed statutory authority but specifically declined to enact it into law, what does that say about the SEC's authority to promulgate the climate disclosure rule?
All right, there's a little bit more here. Hold on.
Commissioner Peirce, let's get into this
20-second clip.
Do you think that one reason why multiple terms are being used here for crypto is that there's no regulatory clarity or consensus identifying which tokens may or may not be offered pursuant to an investment contract?
I think that's absolutely true. We've taken a legally imprecise view to mask the regulatory lack of clarity.
So,
all right, and then the very last clip, guys. I know this has been a long one. I'm sorry, but this is just so good.
Solution under the CRA to repeal the bulletin with support from Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Senate before it was eventually vetoed by the Biden-Harris administration. We are now hearing that the SEC's Office of the Chief Accountant is engaging in conversations with some market participants on a case-by-case confidential basis to inform them if they need to comply with SOB 121. It looks like one firm even received a non-objection from the bulletin. It's incredible how big of a hole the SEC has dug itself into.
Yep.
Yet, despite the backtracking and the rebuke from both houses of Congress, earlier today, Chair Gensler indicated he would not rescind SOB 121 in response to a question from my friend across the aisle, Mr. Wiley Nickel. Chair Gensler, now that the Office of the Chief Accountant is picking and choosing who needs to comply with SOB 121, why wouldn't the SEC simply rescind SOB 121 entirely or issue a new guidance?
Yep.
Stepping back, this guidance, it's the 121st. It's what we've been doing for
55 years, 58
it's
years.
Guidance about what happens in bankruptcy, whose assets are there. And crypto bankruptcy after crypto bankruptcy, bankruptcy courts have said it's not the investors, it's the bankruptcy estate. That's what that accounting bulletin is about.
Listen, if banks hold crypto, they should do it with a custodian, right? With a third party. So if that bank goes bankrupt, the crypto is still held by the custodian and is not affected by the actual bank going bankrupt. They need to figure that out. That's how it should be, right? Now, your banks are going to offer you crypto. That's just the future. But when is that going to happen? When Gary Gensler allows it to happen, or when Gary Gensler gets fired and somebody else comes in and puts that into play?
Is it a liability in bankruptcy, basically? And customers...
Let me reclaim my time, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Peirce, what kind of signal does it send when the SEC is carving out individual firms from its own staff accounting guidance on an one-off basis? What would be the approach you'd recommend instead of a response to the problems caused by SOB 121?
The approach I'd recommend is we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to figure out what the right accounting is in this area, and we need to do that involving the public in a process, not just putting out a staff bulletin. And then applying it, Chair Gensler mentioned earlier, it applies to public companies, and that's true. It applies on its face to public companies, but we've also applied it to broker-dealers, and now, as you pointed out, we're peeling it back for particular entities. There was a question earlier about why there's only one custodian in the ETP space, and one of the reasons is because of our SAB 121, which makes it very hard for people to be custodians in this space.
And think about the market concentration. There's been no accounting bulletin from the SEC that has ever been as fundamentally flawed as SOB 121, nor has there ever been one that has been considered a rule.
And the bank, I think, is BNY Mellon, is the only bank that has been allowed to do this.
According to the GAO, and we certainly haven't seen 60 U.S. senators overturn any of the 120 previous accounting bulletins either. Something's amiss here. This does not look right for the SEC. The situation we're in today is indicative of a failure of your organization to recognize just how problematic SOB 121 has been. Chair Gensler, do you believe that SOB 121 has led to concentration risk because of how few entities are able to offer digital asset custody services?
I think it's actually the right accounting. Off-balance sheet accounting is also what, in part, got us into the 2008 crisis. So just remember, like, when people are trying to hide things and put them off balance sheet, it's not good. Also,
you talk about hiding things, Chairman Gensler. We don't even know what deals you're cutting on SOB 121 when you give a no objection letter to a different firm. Like, if we're going to talk about hiding things, let's talk about transparency. Let's talk about how do people in this country operate under our laws when your commission is doing backroom deals with one-off companies and writing them a no objection letter. That's not transparent. That's not in the interest of the American people. You can't follow rules that you don't know about. What's going on?
Get him, Mr.
The
Flood.
accounting bulletin is the staff accounting bulletin is out, but also for years, companies come in, public companies, and said, this is how we're going to account for something. Do you object? And in this case, if it's remote from bankruptcy, if a company is going to go bankrupt and it's truly the customer's
I'm
funds.
going to hold you there because I want to give your colleague a chance. Commissioner Peirce, I'd like to pose the same question to you. It's market concentration. Is that a risk from SOB 121?
It is a risk, and the accounting raises real questions about whether this is protective of investors or not. And so that's why I think we need to go out with a real process to try to figure this out.
At the end of the day, the SEC has to read the room. And the entire House of Representatives voted on this, and a majority of members of the House rebuked SOB 121, and the Senate, led by the opposing party, they passed it with 60 votes, including the majority leader. This is not a good look for the SEC. This should go away. This is bad policy.
All right. I know that was a long video, but you had to hear all this information, guys. It is important. This is what's going on in the U.S. This is the conversations happening. This is the SEC in front of Congress. Hey, it doesn't get any better than this. We need clarity. We need regulation if we want to take it. Once the U.S. has regulation, other countries are going to follow and create the same regulation so money can flow across borders, and that is when we all can make money. That's what we're here to do, right? I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for being here. Aloha.